Welcome to The Fight, and it begins with Chakotay in sickbay screaming.
No! Make them stop!
Don't worry, Chakotay, very soon the audience is going to be saying the same thing. The purpose of the teaser is to hook the audience's interest to stick around through the title and commercial, and starting the story partway through and then going back to the beginning has worked many times in the past. In this case, though, the audience is more than likely just going to be confused. Chakotay is hearing voices, Voyager is in trouble, and there's something involving chaotic space. Well, after the titles, the Doctor says that despite his best efforts, Chakotay's condition is deteriorating, but we glean that he is connected to aliens, which explains the voices.
I'm gonna end up like my grandfather, a crazy old man.
No, you're not crazy. I believe the aliens are reconfiguring your neural pathways so they can communicate with you.
Could you imagine Chakotay having to explain this situation to somebody unfamiliar with the antics of Voyager? I'm hearing voices in my head, sure, but it's nothing to be concerned about. My doctor told me that it's aliens trying to talk to me. What medical degree? Oh, that? Well, don't worry about that. He's not technically a real person, so he doesn't need a medical degree. It doesn't change the fact that he knows a lot about medicine. I mean, he figured out what was wrong with me. I thought I was hearing voices in my head, but no, he said that aliens were changing my brain so they could talk to me, and that I was definitely not crazy. Now, the reason for this insanity is because this episode ran severely short on time. So they cooked all this stuff up to help fill it out, which winds up with the Doctor explaining the plot to Chakotay. They're stuck in chaotic space, but aliens are reconfiguring Chakotay's mind so they can communicate with them, hopefully to get them out of this mess. So, looks like we don't have to watch the episode then, right? Well, no. We'll get to watch it all unfold, too. It's like on Columbo, where we learn who the killer is ahead of time and how they did the deed, and then the rest of the episode is watching Columbo sit around the office smoking cigars, waiting for a call to go and investigate the murder. The Doctor explains that it all started when Chakotay was in a boxing program.
Boothby was there. He used to train me when I was a cadet.
Well, of course he is. He's old and short, just like Mickey in the Rocky movie, so by default, he has to be a good boxing coach. Plus, it's not as if the groundskeeper of a university who mentors cadets doesn't have oodles of time in order to coach sports, too. He probably finishes up the day by designing new warp engines. No, I take that back. I don't want to beg for irony to come in and actually make that happen. It's happened one time too many. Anyway, boxing. The reason for this is, well, maybe I should back up. When Michael Taylor came on board Voyager, his first script was a tale involving someone thinking that they were going crazy as aliens tried to contact them. Now, I don't know exactly what happened when he turned this script in, but based upon everything I heard, this is my dramatic recreation of how I think it went. Listen, Mick. It's Michael. Listen, Mark. I read through your script, and I have to say, it's smart. It's sophisticated. Hell, I'd even go so far as to say it's sublime. Well, thank you. Take this shit and get the hell out of my office! Well, when Braga took over with Season 5, he thought maybe they could find a way to, well, dumb it down a bit to use it. So naturally, it became a Chakotay story. Plus, there was Beltran, who was desperate for something, anything around here to do that was actually interesting. You know, something that didn't involve just nodding whenever Kate Mulgrew's character said something. So he suggests, how about Chakotay have a background in boxing? Now, I don't roll the dice for this one because he actually had previously established it back in that wrestling one. Anyway, so this idea of boxing had its basis previously, so why not incorporate it into a future episode? So those two ideas were put together and then handed over to Joe Menosky, because it's weird, and nobody handles weird like Menosky does. And Beltran said, well, if you're going to do that, just let me know about 3 weeks ahead of time, okay, so I have a little bit of time in order to get into shape. Well, from what I've heard, apparently there was a fire, and somehow, don't ask me how, that wound up with them telling Beltran only 10 days before the shoot, which did him no favors, as Beltran looks kind of doughy in this outfit. So this thing has already got some strikes against it. Then they add the padding in. The padding, like a pillow being pushed down over the face of a 120-year-old man. It smothers this story, completely kills it. Still, at least there's boxing in it. That's a potentially interesting characteristic for Chakotay, and for once, not connected to his racial background. Although this did come from the actor as opposed to the writers. We know if the writers pitched it in, they probably would have made it basket weaving. Anyway, Boothby's on hand for some advice.
He's not landing any punches.
That's the problem. You're not letting him.
Have I got the sport all wrong?
Boxing is more about taking the shots than dishing them out.
That sounds idiotic. But I'm in favor of seeing Chakotay getting an ass kicking, so let her rip! This beating is interrupted by the vision of a weird distortion behind his opponent, which distracts Chakotay from his getting punched in the face so that he gets punched in the face. Thus he has to go see the doctor, who gives him a lecture like he spent the day chain-smoking and eating deep-fried ding-dongs. The discussion's interrupted by activity on the bridge. There's some huge weird thing out there and moving around rapidly. From what I can gather, Voyager chases this thing around until they catch it and realize they made a stupid mistake. Now they're stuck inside of it, and Seven realizes it's that chaotic space thing. Always great for an exposition scene to tell us what we were already told earlier. But again, there's a reason for it I'll get to a little later. Well, that evening, Chakotay is hearing things related to the boxing match and seeing gloves that aren't actually there. And this problem continues on the bridge until Chakotay starts taking a few swings at Tuvok. Of course, anyone who's worked for Janeway for this long knows how to dodge an unprovoked punch, so it doesn't take long for Tuvok to put down the great trite dope. Well, it turns out that this is because of family history. There's a genetic disorder that runs in Chakotay's family. The gene was suppressed before Chakotay was even born to ensure he didn't suffer from this like his grandfather did. And while he was in there, the doctor must have turned off the gene that gives him a personality. And of course, you can't discuss Chakotay's family without bringing out a flute. You know, the same way that every time Chekhov says something, Kalinka starts playing. I'd like to take a moment as we deal with this to remind everyone, since this will be cropping up so much, that Chakotay's entire heritage was cooked up completely by a well-known fraud, who frequently pissed off actual Native American groups because when he wasn't ripping other people off, he was inventing offensive bullcrap or promoting stereotypes about them. So yeah, that's Star Trek. Their first prominent American Indian character was crafted based on the word of a known con man and was played for 7 years by someone who openly hated just being there. And hey, with Discovery coming out soon, LGBTQ, you'll be getting your first character soon too. And based on this track record, you have absolutely nothing to worry about. Nothing at all. Well, it seems crazy is catchy because Voyager stumbles across another ship, and the communication recording they pick up is of someone babbling crazy crap like Chakotay was. A weird coincidence coupled with grim news, because the ship has even better sensors than Voyager's, and they were stuck in here a year before their ship finally broke down and they all died. An examination of the crazy guy reveals that there's no question that this guy had visual and auditory hallucinations, but caused in a completely different way.
By what?
There might be something in chaotic space that reacts with DNA, alters it. But why it targeted him specifically and now you, I can't say.
Oh, I can. It's because of the aliens. Because you told us that 15 minutes ago, that they altered Chakotay's brain in order to talk to him. And yet the episode handles this like a normal mystery. Here's a clue to the overall plot, which you don't need because you already know the answer. And the answer is...
I need to go on a vision quest.
No, that is never the answer. To anything. The doctor tries to talk him out of it, bless him, but Chakotay insists it might be the answer. And after all, his grandfather practiced their religion and it did squat to help him, so good plan. But the doctor won't be satisfied without giving him a neck thingy. Those are given out the way old-timey doctors gave out lollipops. So Chakotay breaks out the old Akuna, the device created so that, unlike his ancestors, Chakotay could go on a vision quest without needing a sweat lodge. Or as his ancestors in the equatorial jungle would have called a sweat lodge, the outside on any fucking day. Inside this, he sees his grandfather acting like a babbling idiot because, you know, spirit and stuff. Then he's back in a boxing ring before waking up and telling the doctor. But thanks to the way the episode has been put together, we don't know if this event is a flashback or if this is happening right now. But I think it's safe to say it doesn't matter because the scene is stupid.
Let them speak to you.
No! You make me go crazy.
You're not going crazy. They're doing this for a reason. You've got to trust them.
Why? Voyager has so far had a fairly consistent streak of aliens who were dicks, some of whom screwed with the crew just for their own personal amusement. But Chakotay listens. He has to. This scene exists to pad out the episode. And padding means, oh yes, Chakotay's going to rattle off a whole bunch of technobabble. It's our go-to means of filling out an episode. I mean, what are our other choices? We can't very well establish mood because the episode doesn't have any, and we can't explore character because Chakotay doesn't have one. Technobabble's all we've got left. So Janeway is sent in to get Chakotay to focus on communicating with the aliens.
You think this could risk your sanity? But your sanity won't do you any good if we remain in chaotic space.
It's never done you any good on this ship before. Why would you think it would help now? He agrees, and now we figure out, oh yeah, this is the present. And now Chakotay is supposed to have a flashback to a dream sequence. Well, that's a twofer. In the dream, Tuvok and security are on hand with phaser rifles to shoot Chakotay's opponents, and Paris with a pad showing that the odds are horribly against him. The consensus of everybody is that if Chakotay tries, he's going to get creamed. He needs more training, if he's not interrupted.
I follow your example. Learn from you. Look up to you.
So that explains why Harry's as wooden as Chakotay. They're all trying to talk him out of it, except for one person.
Chakotay's fine. He just needs a little conditioning, that's all.
I submit that anyone who dreams Neelix is giving them a massage is far from fine. No wonder Chakotay will soon be screaming that he's gone mad and wants this all to end. He knows that if he goes back in there, there will be 3 Neelixes giving him a mani-pedi and a facial. Now, let me take a moment to expound upon this point that I have been beating on myself over the course of this review. The medical scenes, and what a huge disservice they do this episode. Minoski's script is built around 2 important points, mystery and symbolism. And those scenes are giving answers to the mystery before it has played out and making the symbols meaningless. To appreciate this, try imagining the film Alien, where it's normal right up until the point where our heroes find that alien ship, and then it cuts and they reveal this is a flashback of everyone telling Kane what happened with the facehugger, with the acid blood, and about his amazing recovery. And then you let the film play out as normal from back at that scene there. All the tension is sucked out of it because we have been told in bland and tepid dialogue all of this stuff already. The fight is the first work that I can recall that needs a spoiler warning for itself. And now let's talk about the symbolism. And if I sound like I'm angry, well, it's only because I am. But there's a reason for that. I know it might seem like I hate on Voyager just to hate on something. That's what we on the internet do, after all. But there's a reason for it, and that's because Voyager wastes potential. It has so many possibilities and just squanders them. And the fight is the very avatar, the symbol of what is wrong with Voyager. Why? Because this is an episode with so much potential that they completely fucked up. I can't believe they did this. What it's all about is the symbolism here, presenting Chakotay's psyche like an onion that's got layers that are gradually peeled back to reveal more and more about this person. This man who gave up a career in Starfleet to go and fight what seemed surely a losing battle against the Cardassians. He was willing to stand his ground and defend his land in the face of this ultimate terror. And yet, what do we see on display here? Fear. Chakotay is afraid. He's afraid he's going to become a crazy old man just like his grandpa had been. And this ties in with the boxing thing. However silly the thing might seem with Boothby at the beginning, the point being that the boxing training is about overcoming fear. Not a fear of being punched, but a fear of going crazy in this case. And what's more, the conditioning is also about Chakotay's preparations in order to be ready to become the hero that will save the ship. That's what it's all about. And none of it fucking matters because we had it all spelled out to us 20 minutes ago. So all we're doing is seeing silly things taking place that already emphasize what we already know. Thanks, Voyager. Thanks for destroying your own fucking show once again. That's the problem I have with this thing here. How can you properly judge an episode that deliberately sabotages itself? I mean, it's like you found a print of Citizen Kane where throughout the movie, someone keeps carrying sleds with the word Rosebud around in every scene. Huge tractor trailers parked behind the actors with Rosebud Sled Company in huge letters on the side. Kid on the street with a newspaper. Extry, extry. Wealthy man consumed by desire for power laments loss of innocence symbolized by his sled. Extry. Anyway, eventually Chakotay is roused out of the vision by the Doctor in Paris. The Doctor, who has of course insisted in all of these framing scenes Chakotay has to do this, is of course berating Chakotay for doing this. As if you needed any more proof that these things were half-assed. But yeah, the situation is serious. Tom Paris number 1 will have to help get Chakotay to sickbay to try to treat his medical problem, while Tom Paris number 2 tries his best to navigate Voyager out of chaotic space using these navigational buoys.
At this speed, we should see daylight in about 2 months. The longer we're in chaotic space, the longer we're exposed to these unknowns.
His logic is undeniable, Captain. We should increase our speed.
Finally.
Who am I to dispute logic?
Wait, brainstorm. Harry, I want you to head outside, put a rope between your teeth, and tow us out by swimming out of chaotic space.
But I can't breathe out there. You can't move through space by swimming.
That's normal space. This is chaotic space. The laws of nature aren't the same here, remember? Therefore, they have to be different. Therefore, you can do all those things.
Captain, that...
Sorry, but the logic is undeniable, and who am I to dispute logic? Don't forget to replicate some flippers, Harry.
The plan fails, but Seven has found that there's a signal going out, one that is deliberately designed to alter DNA, and that this is the aliens doing it to communicate with them. Which, sorry to beat a dead horse, we already know! Chakotay is sent back into his dream, which is the boxing ring, and the opponent, Kid Chaos, is a personification of the anomaly stuff. But the aliens are using this to piece together memories of words to form sentences for Chakotay to grasp. They start to explain, and then the damn framing interrupts. Dear God, I hate it so. To show once again how awkward they are, the Doctor insists that Chakotay has to do this, encourages him to do this. So when they arrive on the bridge, the Doctor is acting as if Chakotay is completely gaga and probably should be stopped. Because in the actual script, Chakotay was basically rushing out of sickbay after a procedure the Doctor wasn't entirely confident in. Then they inserted a scene in there that completely reversed the original intent. That's why I'm saying it's so hard to fairly judge this episode. Someone took a complex tale that may or may not have worked and ensured it definitely will not work. You could not have sabotaged this any harder without pulling the film from the camera and pissing all over it. Anyway, Chakotay fixes up the sensor so they can escape, goes back to boxing, and it's the end. Post-episode follow-up. Stupid Neelix's moment is his massaging of Chakotay. It's not stupid so much as it is very frightening to witness. Again, how do you score an episode that had someone come in after the fact and ruin it on purpose? After much consideration, I'm giving this a score of 3 out of 10. There's a hint that something memorable could have been in there and actually for once used Chakotay to great effect. In fact, it's entirely possible that if they hadn't screwed with this might just have been the best Chakotay episode. Of course, instead of inserting scenes that could have made the episode better, we wound up inserting scenes of Picardo and Beltran chewing the scenery, and so any such possibility was severely hindered. You can even clearly see the seams here. The teaser should have been Chakotay boxing until he's knocked out. Then the titles, episode proper starts with the Doctor saying how many fingers. If you remove that and remove all the other stuff, I'm convinced you could have had a much better episode. Of course, if you did that, you would have about what looks like 5 or 6 minutes to fill. And admittedly, the episode was already finished at the time, so in order to do that, they would have to, well, do it on the cheap, because the budget was already spent after all. You'd need minimal actors, you need to use existing sets and props, you preferably limit it to a single set so that they could film it in a minimum amount of time, and nothing that would require any special effects. I'm sure it seemed a good idea at the time. But it was a bad idea. A very, very bad idea. So bad that, frankly, I could use a break from all this, so we'll be back in 2 weeks with How Sharper Than a Serpent's Tooth.
All hail the Overlord! All hail
Hail the Overlord!
I'm afraid.